Hey, it's Luke from LT Gaming, and today we're back in the neon-soaked streets of Nivalis Nights. Yeah, you totally heard me correctly, they've actually changed the name of this game since we last covered it. Formerly known simply as Nivalis, developer Ion Lands revealed in June that a legal matter with a third party had held up their marketing and their announcements. On the positive side, that has now been resolved. Nivalis has officially become Nivalis Nights, and more importantly, we finally have a release date of September 29th, 2026. And this remains for me one of the most undercovered upcoming games on YouTube. It looks absolutely gorgeous, it's doing something quite unusual with the Cyberpunk setting, and now that we are only around a month from release, I thought it was the perfect time to dive back in and see exactly what has changed. You know, get you all a little bit excited for this one. So before we jack ourselves into another corporate controlled dystopia, perhaps hack that like button below. It costs fewer credits than flying a taxi, CorpSec probably won't arrest you for doing it, and it massively helps the channel. Nivalis Nights is a first-person cyberpunk life simulation from Ion Lands, the team behind Cloudpunk, and it actually takes place in the very same towering city. This time, however, you're not simply passing through Nivalis as a delivery driver. I absolutely love Cloudpunk, by the way. You're trying to build an actual life here, which means immersion will be off the scale. The developers describe the game as a combination of narrative, life simulation, and management, with a defined story running through the experience rather than it being a completely directionless sandbox. You start small, potentially running something as simple as a noodle stand, but over time you can grow into restaurants and nightclubs. You can buy homes and meet the people who reside in this amazing city. However, the challenge comes from CorpSec crackdowns, rival businesses, and a mysterious serial killer operating in the district. So underneath all the cozy mechanics, there's something to challenge you here. The first major part of Nivalis Nights is simply living in Nivalis, and I think this might ultimately be what separates it from the huge number of management sims that come to Steam. You're encouraged to actually talk to people and become part of the community rather than treating NPCs as vending machines for quests. The developers have also stated that there are more than 130 characters tied into the side stories, each with their own background and goals, and your interactions can develop into friendships, rivalries, business partnerships, or even romance. Just don't tell my wife. As a knock-on effect, those relationships can then affect quests, story outcomes, and even your finances. As an example of this, certain vendors might start offering you better prices if you regularly do business with them. There's also a main story underneath all of this as well, with different paths leading towards the ending. So investigating the city and getting to know its inhabitants is a core aspect of this game. Also the music. I cannot wait for the music. I'll use some cracking cyberpunk style soundtracks in this one. Let me know if you recognize any. I'm a big fan of LeBrock, Nina and Wolf Club, so if you know those bands, also maybe let me know in the comments. I've seen LeBrock live twice and I even sang at one point. It was a bit mental. But I digress. Let's get back to the game, of course. Then there's your business empire, which starts relatively modestly but can eventually stretch across several areas of the city. You can manage menus, employ staff, and worry about whether your customers are actually enjoying themselves. You can buy supplies from vendors, take your boat out fishing, or rent greenhouses and grow ingredients yourself. Those greenhouses can then be upgraded with machinery and environmental controls, letting you adjust things like temperature, humidity, and lighting to improve your crops. The food you produce from these can then supply your restaurants, which means something like fishing or farming isn't simply a disconnected mini-game. It potentially feeds directly back into the economics of your wider business. But what I really like is that you don't have to spend every waking moment staring at a profit margin in this game. You can buy apartments and even standalone houses across Nivalis, then completely decorate them using the hundreds of pieces of furniture the developers have created. Maybe there's an awesome opportunity for modding here like they did with Dystopica, probably one of my favourite cyberpunk games ever. Just a quick interlude to say subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 100k and we really need you to get there. We are a proper PC gaming channel. You're going to find all the best games here, including space, war games, RTS, and everything you can think of. We even do some amazing mod spotlights. So if you have amazing taste in games, hit the subscribe button. Both me and Tom really appreciate you. If you do become obsessed with games like these, as I do, you can even decorate other people's properties for money. There's other activities also, like taking your boat out onto the water, discovering new fishing locations, playing mini games, and apparently even competing in a cyberpunk chess tournament. Tom will be a big fan of that. And once night falls, things can get a little more questionable in this game. Nivalis has a curfew, but you can choose to ignore it, avoid security systems, and even sabotage competing businesses after hours. Day and night are therefore supposed to provide genuinely different opportunities days rather than the clock simply changing the colour of the sky. 2 of the newest updates have given us a much clearer picture of how getting around and feeding everyone actually works in-game. Nivalis is spread across large separate districts, with taxis and the metro providing the main ways of travelling between them. Unfortunately, you cannot directly drive cars yourself, which I think is a bit of a miss at this stage, but you can pilot your own boat, allowing you to explore the waterways and reach fishing locations at your own pace. There will also be loading screens when moving between major districts, although once inside one can freely explore it and enter most businesses. Food meanwhile looks surprisingly substantial. The developers revealed in August that restaurants will need the correct recipes, ingredients and equipment to produce different dishes, with food selection potentially influencing the type of clientele you attract. So while the transport element was slightly disappointing to me, the business side really does appeal. Apparently also, if we want some extra detail, there's over 240 ingredients and 190 meals to create. So underneath all the beautiful neon signs, there seems to be a proper management simulation. And just living and moving around Nivalis is something I cannot wait for, probably my most anticipated game of the year at this stage. And this is where Nivalis Nights becomes seriously interesting to me, because if all of those systems actually connect properly, this could be one of the standout simulation games of the year. Plenty of games that you run a restaurant, decorate an apartment, or build relationships. But here those things are supposed to exist inside one functioning city. You might spend the morning sourcing ingredients, meet someone connected to a side story, check in on one of their businesses, and then decide to break curfew later that night and get up to some mischief. In that respect, it reminds me a little bit of Shadows of Doubt. That game had a wonderful atmosphere and the city creation was absolutely brilliant. Mechanically, of course, they are very different games, but both are trying to make the city feel like it exists beyond the player. Nivalis Nights has thousands of NPCs running simulated schedules and more than 10,000 persistent world objects, which could make it feel much like somewhere you actually inhabit rather than simply a backdrop. And Nivalis Nights isn't trying to compete with Cyberpunk 2077 because it's not obviously an action RPG, but it might satisfy the other side of the cyberpunk fantasy, simply existing in a beautiful neon-soaked city. And I think for me, the main appeal with this type of game is living within that city and being immersed. I don't necessarily need the combat. In this regard, the music, the sound effects, and everything that makes you feel like you're living within this little world will be extremely important. Nivalis Nights is incredibly high on my current wish list. There's a huge amount going on here. I will say that ambition is also the biggest question mark, because games with this many interconnected systems can either become something special or collapse under their own weight. With the developer Ion Lands and what they delivered with Cloudpunk, I am optimistic. To me, this is simply one of the most interesting simulation games of the year, and I can't wait to review it. I've been Luke from LT Gaming, and I'll see you out there somewhere in the rain at a noodle bar.